Hello, all you beautiful beings, and welcome to the show. I'm Lane Smith Brown, and this is episode number 25 of the Unleash Your Life podcast. And today we're going to have a conversation about the fogginess of my brain and how I cleared a path to the next iteration of myself. It might be something that'll prove helpful to you as well. This is the Unleash Your Life podcast, where you're going to learn to rewild yourself. I'm your host, Lane Smith Brown, and I'm a best-selling author and rewilding guide. And over the last 20 years, I've been guiding women back to their truest selves. You see, you were born wild with all the wisdom you will ever need to navigate your life in a beautiful and powerful way. Then, just like everyone else on the planet, you got tamed as you fell under the power and influence of others who were also tamed. All that taming you got as a kid has you convinced you are less powerful than you really are. I call all of that unconscious programming power leaks. And on this show, you're going to discover yours, and then you're going to choose to plug them so you can get back to the wild, wise, and powerful being that you are. So grab a coffee, glass of wine, or a favorite friend, or all three, and let's talk about what living your wild self can mean for you. All right, welcome back to the show. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks to all of you who keep coming back and keep taking in this information. We need more and more of you out there. So thanks for being here. If this is your first show, welcome. I'm glad you're here too. I know you're going to get a lot out of this session, and if anything in here leaves you at a bit of a loss, just go back to start at episode 1. We're building as we go along here, and there is a bunch of foundational shows that will prove helpful as we get to know each other a little bit more. So on that note, let's get on with it. Have you ever felt like you're in a bit of a fog? You can't seem to string a cohesive sentence together, or you get easily distracted and can't seem to finish anything? This is how my last couple of weeks have been. I've been scattered, tired. My body has been a bit achy, and all I really wanted to do was veg. But I can't veg. It would be in direct conflict with my work ethic and what I have been conditioned to believe makes me a worthwhile human. I need to produce in order to fill my obligation to the universe and the planet. This belief, or power leak, comes from my religion and my family heritage. It is deep in my psyche and deep in my DNA. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. Wasn't sloth a deadly sin? Have you ever used sloth in a sentence? And how often have you heard the early bird gets the worm? You've got to have drive, hustle, and tenacity. Never give up. Never give in. Rest is for the wicked. With all of that playing in my background, I find it somewhat ironic that when I am transitioning to a new iteration of myself, when the universe is trying to show me something, I experience the fog, where every effort to keep moving forward is thwarted. Every time I feel the fog descend, my response is to make every effort to keep pressing on. Work even harder, start new projects, try to learn more things, take on new tasks, just so I can fail and feel shame. Every bit of work I try to accomplish amounts to nothingness, just acts of futility. I would have been served well to just rest. So this has been my pattern for years. The idea of experiencing the fog and deciding to rest and slow down, allowing my body and mind to assimilate the information that is trying to get in. was lost on me. Finally, I would get so exhausted from the fight, I'd give in. And then I'd integrate what it was I'd been gifted with, a transformational thought or of some kind, and it would take me closer to my intuition, power, and purpose. Do you ever do that? Do you know how your intuition is trying to get in and you resist it in some way? Not necessarily deliberately, but just out of habit. If we do it to reinforce an underlying belief, a power leak. You're not alone if you've done it. And if you want some tools to change it, they're coming. Before I go there, though, did you know that feelings of shame are a nearly universal experience? Brene Brown, the now famous research scientist, author, and speaker, calls it a worldwide epidemic. And she should know. She's been studying its prevalence and effects for decades. Most of us have been conditioned from our families, steeped in it, exposed to religions and religious instruction that have used it as a means of control, and a media that is constantly telling us we do not measure up. We're not pretty enough, smart enough, cool enough, trendy enough. All right, so if you've been listening for a while, you know that there was some foundational stuff in my life that left me feeling invisible and unworthy. That too is nearly universal. A part of my unconscious reaction to that feeling was to make sure I was contributing all of the time. I needed to do stuff, make stuff, cook stuff, write stuff. Something that said, I'm making every minute count here, people. I'm not wasting any of it. I'm valuable. See, I'm valuable. And then my higher self puts me in the fog, and I balk. In this state of disconnect, I keep moving forward and fail. Move forward again and fail, and move forward again and fail again. All the old feelings of shame descend, and I feel worthless, like I'm just wasting my time, wasting everyone's time. We do get dramatic, don't we? I do that until I finally can't fight any longer, and I can hear her voice saying, "Oh, Lane, you could make this so much easier on yourself if you just stopped as soon as it starts to happen. As soon as you feel the fog. Just know that I've really got something important to share with you. If you just quieten down." And I just softly smile and finally lay my head down and rest. Do you ever have these types of feelings? Is your worth connected to how much you produce, or how much money you make, or how much money you have stored away somewhere? Maybe it's about not having yet acquired the house, the mate, the kids, the golden career, or the fame. No judgment on what you desire. None of it is good or bad. But I'll tell you this. If you've got shame playing in the background, it's a significant reason why the stuff that you want has not materialized, or why the stuff that you have is not satisfying. Unworthiness comes from shame, and shame is the most prevalent power leak in the world today. As women, we have been conditioned for so many generations that our mere existence is something we should be embarrassed about. After all, we are the origin of sin, aren't we? Man, how much better the world would be if we hadn't taken a bite of that damn apple, eh? There are many in the world who are afraid of our innate power, and have been afraid of our power since the dawn of time. And so, every time we exhibit this intrinsic power, we are told to be quiet, sit down, wait our turn. This isn't our time. Be a good girl and stay in the background. This is a much bigger topic than we have time for in this particular podcast. I just want you to be aware of how many messages you've received, overtly or covertly, in your lifetime that have caused you to be embarrassed or shameful about who you are and how you do your life. It could be about your size, it could be about your money, it could be about whether or not you went to college. It could be about how much space you're taking up in the world with your personality. It could be about your sexuality and your desire. It could be about you wanting too much, striving too much, desiring too much. Most of us have picked up from media, whether it's advertising companies or influencers, that our unique beauty and gifts can be out of style if it doesn't match up with what is particularly valued at any given moment. We are by our very nature less than whatever that ideal happens to be in the moment. Seriously, we are living in days where the size of our butts can be out of style. Really. And we just go along for the ride. The whole world is in a bit of a fog right now. Nothing is predictable. So much is in a state of flux. And if my theory holds that being in this non-productive state means something new is trying to come in, then maybe we should make some effort at preparing ourselves to be inviting hosts. What do you think? Okay, so let me go back to my particular fog. I'm being called to up-level my relationship to money. I've said in previous episodes that I picked up some crazy energy around what money is from my childhood. And I've gotten clear on tons of that. And now I'm being called to another iteration of myself, another level up. You see, I've got a big dream, and it's going to take a lot of coin. And in order for the dream to materialize, I need to open to the possibility of it and the inevitability of it. I need to get beyond a background energy of shame that I am too small for this big dream. Can you identify with this at all? Do you have a dream and an aspiration that seem to be beyond your ability to create, or perhaps it's beyond your scope of deservability? I just made that up, but it's a good one, no? We have an amazing opportunity right now to zone in on the stuff that really matters to us, because we're living in a time that has less distractions than we've become accustomed to globally. We're spending more time alone. We're spending more time at home. Less time going out. Some of us are in offices with far less people, or we're working remotely from our houses. We're grocery shopping maybe every 2 weeks instead of every 2 days. We're less impacted by the busyness that infiltrated our life before this worldwide pause button was hit. That is, of course, if you're not spending all of your time on Netflix or getting lost on your phone. All these changes, all these new experiences, all these new considerations. Can you feel the shift of energies, priority changes, new ways of accomplishing things? So much is being disrupted. Innovation, transformation, and new opportunities come from disruption. It's a great instigator of new ideas and new ways of walking in the world. All right, so for the last several months, in all of this disruptive energy we're in, I have been called to up-level my relationship with money and resources. And I can describe it in no other way than a metaphysical battle that has left me rather beat up and exhausted. Now, For those of you who don't quite understand what I'm talking about when I say being called, for me, it's simply this gnawing thought that I need to go down a different path. Little clues show up in what I'm reading or observing that remind me of this idea. And it all feels like breadcrumbs saying, follow me, follow me. And the beating up part is me saying, no, I do not want to do that. Or, no, that's not my issue. So shut up. Has that ever happened to you? Often it feels like the last thing you should do or want to do. But if you've actually taken the ride in previous times, in conflict with your rational mind, it's likely taken you to some pretty spectacular places. If nothing else, it's broadened your perspective or your horizons. For me, the battle was not about trying to push the idea away, but in trying to discover why it keeps coming up, especially since I've been under the impression that I've already done this work. Surely I've moved past this, no? Well, clearly not. Confronted with that realization, I decided to seek some advice, a new perspective, new information, new tools, something to shake me up and get me moving again. So here's a question for you. Have you experienced any trauma in your life? The trauma could have come from a variety of things, from seemingly small and insignificant moments to circumstances of relentless, monstrous, and difficult to understand behaviors at the hands of other people. Most of my trauma comes from my religion and from what my parents took in about their religion and how that affected their parenting and how they lived their lives. Here's a related side note that you might find interesting. It shocked the pants off of me the first time I heard it, until I thought about it for a while and I could see the truth of it. Dr. Marlene Winell, a California psychologist and author of Leaving the Fold, states the results of living in a misogynistic, authoritarian, dogmatic religion. The results are that it manifests in our brains as PTSD. No lie, proven theory based on brain scans. Really? Now let's say your background isn't religious. Well, let's see what happens when I change out one word, the source, in that quote. Living in a misogynistic, authoritarian, dogmatic society manifests itself in our brains as PTSD. Can I get a hell yeah? Now, trauma of any kind, regardless of its origin, causes most of us to live in our heads because we've learned that our bodies are not a safe place to be. They are not to be trusted. It's too painful to be in them. It causes a disassociation to varying degrees in most of us. It was not a deliberate choice. It was simply the only way we knew to navigate uncomfortable situations when we were young. So can we feel disconnected or not in control in certain areas of our lives? Like there's a mystery to our thoughts and behaviors, and it leaves us confused and feeling out of control. Now, I have made the journey to my heart on a whole bunch of different areas in my life that used to be a conundrum. However, the progress I've made on money seems almost accidental. As a result, it keeps me in a holding pattern of some kind. It's an area where I still feel myself drifting. To be clear, I'm not talking about paying the bills kind of money. I'm talking about being able to change the trajectory of thousands of people's lives kind of money. My dream is about creating a foundation that funds innovation and people's dreams. It's a working concept, but it is part of my path. Now, if you've not heard me use the term drifting before, it's describing how we humans have been conditioned to drift through our lives. Drift and not ask questions. Drift and not challenge the status quo. We've been socialized to drift, especially from the start of the industrial age, when subservient worker bees were in high demand to keep the machines and production lines moving efficiently. Our world has changed dramatically since then, but our churches, schools, political structures, and the media are still building factory workers. Just shut up and do what you're told. Leave the thinking to the ones who know what's best for you. It means we can be lulled into not driving or directing our lives. We're just letting things unfold, completely disconnected from ourselves. We're unconsciously moving through our life, letting the tide take us wherever it chooses to take us. Does that sound familiar to you at all? Can you see where you're doing this already? What we're doing here on this show is no longer buying into that state of drift that 90% of the world is still living in. You and me, we're taking charge of our lives and we're holding each other accountable. Every area of our lives. And we are learning to live in our true power, purpose, and intention. Whether you choose to believe it or not, there is a system in place that is pushing women to get distracted by petty things like the size of their butts or their breasts, to their age or their gray hairs. Whether you choose to stay home and raise your kids or go to work and fulfill your desires in a field that interests you. Judgment. And that with that judgment comes shame. And often from our own gender. If you don't have an education or the right education, shame. If you're not dressed the right way, you can experience shame. If you don't have entrepreneurial desires or instincts, yeah, shame. If you're not married, you can experience shame. If you haven't had kids or don't like your kids or don't want kids, you can experience shame. If you're too ambitious or not ambitious enough, you can experience shame. I doubt there's a topic or an inclination that can't be shamed in some way, shape, or form unless you are fully in your power. Does that sound about right to you? Whatever your shame is, it's a power leak. And in a future show, I'm going to show you how it might actually be what's going to lead you to your purpose. But we'll talk about that at another time. Whatever made you feel inappropriate, unvaluable, too loud, awkward, or embarrassing to someone else caused you to disassociate yourself from your body in some way. So in order to do the work that we're doing here, you are going to need to embrace the fact that you are a wisdom machine. You are connected to a source of abundance that is beyond measure, and you cannot access it from the busyness. You can only access it from the stillness. I listened to Susie Batiste speak recently, and she said, the longest and most meaningful relationship you will ever have in your life is with yourself. Oh, I love that. It's a big, beautiful statement, filled with truth. And I wonder how many of you love the sound of that, but don't do it. Do you foster your relationship with yourself? Do you spend time seeking to understand what she needs, what she desires, what thrills her, what sets her on fire and ignites her passion? Do you encourage her to speak her mind, stand up for herself, and live fully out loud and on purpose? Do you tell her that her dreams are perfect and encourage her to go in the direction of them instead of shying away? You know, like you would for your very best friend in the whole world. When you were growing up, did you learn that your longest and most meaningful relationship of your life is going to be with yourself? Or were you here to serve others from a place of subservience, not from a place of abundance and power? Were you encouraged to embrace all your power and majesty, or were you encouraged to keep the noisiness of all of that quiet? As a kid, I was encouraged to be quiet. My whole family was encouraged to be quiet because my father did not like a noisy house. And whatever my father wanted, my father got. So I learned to turn down the volume of who I came in as in so many ways. I bottled things up. I settled for just good enough. I deferred to the needs of others, especially those in authority to me, or men in general. All unconscious, no active choices, just from a disconnection of my body from my mind to what I needed and wanted. So back again to me being called to up-level my relationship with abundance, specifically financial abundance. I've inadvertently managed to throw an anchor out of my drifting boat on this topic, and it has been dragging along the bottom of the sea and making the water really, really muddy. You know how you get muddy water to become clear again? You sit. You don't move. You just sit in it. You sit and you wait. And soon enough, all the muddy, sandy particles, all the bits and pieces of shells and rocks and sea life settle back down, and you can see clearly again, right to the bottom. So that's what I did. Now, stillness isn't necessarily sitting on the couch doing nothing. It is simply the idea of opening yourself up to another way. It is learning to stay sitting in that stillness when it gets uncomfortable, when the judgment starts to come, when the questioning begins to come, when the insecurities or feelings of unworthiness start to rear their ugly head. It is staying in the discomfort and knowing in the core of your being, if you can make the journey from your head to your heart, there is more information available to you. And shame is what bubbled up to the surface for me. And I am not alone. Shame is one of the deepest bonds we share with all of humanity, and it is precisely why we act in so many childish ways as a collective, because we haven't learned to sit in that feeling and understand that that feeling is built on bullshit. I began to see more clearly that my fear of up-leveling financially, as I am being called to do, is being held back by the lie of my unworthiness. It manifests in sabotage, all steeped in a conditioned response of shame. So I called it. I put my foot down. I could now see this little tyrant plainly. I have nothing to be ashamed of. You have nothing to be ashamed of. I have done nothing wrong. You have done nothing wrong. When we allow ourselves to believe the lie of all of that conditioning, we allow our authentic power to leak out. So do me a favor right now as you're listening and get the image in your head of the champagne bottle and the cork plugged into the top of it. Okay? For those of you unfamiliar with this analogy, just go back to podcast number 9. There's a good description there. So you've got that image in your mind, and there is so much pressure inside that bottle, so much desire, so many dreams, so much purpose, so much tenacity, so much quirky wonderfulness that is uniquely you, and it's just bursting to get out. And all of that gorgeous energy is being held in by a cork, a lie called shame. Does that sound about right for you? Are you listening to me and saying, holy shit, that's me? I can feel it. I am holding myself back because I believe that I am not worthy of my dreams and my ambitions. I am not worthy of my power. I'm not worthy of what I feel called to do in this world. I find myself asking myself, who am I to want this thing? Who am I to be this thing? Remember what Marianne Williamson's response to that was? Here it is. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Who are you not to be? All that you dream yourself to be. Suppose you were to let go of the shame or whatever you have determined your power leak or your cork to be. Suppose you were to let it go and pop that freaking cork. What happens when you let go of the shame or regret or insecurity or disappointment or worry or fear or grudge? Imagine what your life would be like if you weren't stuck in that old way of thinking. Think about it. Imagine what your life would be like, could be like, unencumbered by this self-defeating thought that you're still holding on to. What happens to your life when that belief is no longer powerful over you? Now, do you have that picture in your mind? Can you see where you might be if you just let go? Can you see yourself maybe in a different job, a different career, or a different business, in a different relationship or in a different type of relationship, in a different country, in a different city, or in a different home? Do you see yourself creating something, changing something, or dismantling something? Do you see yourself leading the charge on something that needs to be birthed into the world? Do you see yourself acting differently, looking differently? Do you see yourself challenging something or someone? Do you see yourself changing the outcome of your life? More satisfaction, more resources, more time, more energy, more purpose. Perhaps you want to change a friend's life or a kid's life. Maybe you want to rest, truly rest, and be. And allow your heart to tell you what it has available for you. It won't happen if you don't pop the cork. You have to let go of the lie. I have a quote that I can see every day when I sit down to my computer, and it goes like this. The only thing standing between me and everything I want is the belief that there is something standing in the way. We have been conditioned to constantly put ourselves in check. We've been told to watch our language, to dumb down our power or our brilliance, to settle for less than we want. That's all conditioning. The more of us out there proving that we are innately powerful, that we are innately connected to everything that exists in the universe, that we have access to knowledge and inspiration and imagination and ideas that can completely change the trajectory of this world. Our world will change, and for the better. But you've got to do the work to let go of the lies and pop the cork and plug your power leaks. You can't serve the world keeping yourself locked in that bottle. It's time to make a decision. It's time to look at where you are and where you want to go and ask yourself, what is it that I need to let go of in order to get there? The only thing standing between you and everything you want is the belief that there is something standing in the way. What do you believe is standing in your way? Now, that's a good place to leave you, don't you think? Find a way to be still this week, okay? Find a way to listen to that still small voice inside of you calling you to be yourself. That's it for today. Thanks for being here. I love that you're curious about this work. Meet me back here for another conversation next time. And until then, stay weird, stay curious, and keep popping your corks. Well, I hope this show rocked your world a little bit. If you want additional resources, check out the links in the show notes or at lanesmithbrown.com. And before you go, please subscribe to this podcast. It's how we get these tools into the world. And this world needs more wild women standing in their authentic power. Do that for me, will ya? Thank you.